Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly glad you're joining me because today we are diving into a true crime story that literally captivated and haunted the nation for over a decade. We're exploring the Gilgo Beach killer case, and specifically, how a seemingly impossible cold case was finally cracked by modern technology. This is honestly one of America's most infamous, deeply frustrating, and complex serial killer mysteries. But as we'll see today, it's also this profound testament to how modern science, combined with just sheer, stubborn investigative endurance, can completely rewrite an ending that everyone thought was already set in stone. So I want you to picture this. Imagine you're driving along this remarkably quiet stretch of beach on Long Island, New York. It's December 2010. The ocean right beside you is perfectly calm, the sand is empty, and the whole area just looks incredibly peaceful. But there was a dark, dark secret hidden right there in the thick brush beside the road. In that very brush along Ocean Parkway lay a horrific reality that would completely shatter the tranquility of this coastal community. And it sparked a manhunt unlike anything New York had ever seen. Part 1. The Shocking Discovery. Okay, so to really grasp how wild this case is, understanding the timeline of how it all unraveled is absolutely crucial. Back in December 2010, police officers were out conducting a search near Gilgo Beach for a missing woman named Shanann Gilbert. During that initial search, an officer and his canine dog stumbled upon something terrifying: human remains. Now, at first, investigators logically assumed they had just found one single victim. But within a matter of days, the horrifying scope of this crime really came into focus. They found 4 women all buried right along Ocean Parkway. They had been wrapped in burlap and hidden just a short distance from the road. And as the search expanded, even more remains were discovered nearby. In the blink of an eye, a search for one missing person had escalated into the largest serial murder investigation in New York State history. But we absolutely have to ground this narrative in the heartbreaking reality of who was actually lost. Most of these victims were young women, and many had worked as escorts. What's especially agonizing here is that a lot of these women had been missing for years before their remains were ever found. I mean, try to imagine the sheer terror and the agonizing years their families spent searching for answers, right? Never knowing what happened to their daughters, their sisters, their friends. Investigators quickly realized that the killer had carefully selected isolated locations and taken huge steps to avoid being identified, basically preying on vulnerable individuals and leaving their families completely in the dark for over a decade. Part 2. A decade of mystery. For years, a single haunting question just hovered over everything. Who was responsible? The case quickly caught fire in the media, and it attracted intense national attention. If you consume any true crime media at all, you definitely remember this era. I mean, television programs, extensive documentaries, deep dive podcasts, newspaper series, they all obsessively circled this one question. The public was absolutely desperate for an answer, yet this phantom killer seemed completely out of reach. And this era of the case was really defined by a stark contrast. On one hand, you had this massive, overwhelming public attention. Multiple police departments were involved, and they reviewed thousands upon thousands of tips. The pressure was just immense. But on the flip side, there was a total lack of usable evidence. At the time, the DNA evidence they had was incredibly limited. There were no fingerprints that matched anyone in the databases. The killer appeared to have just vanished into thin air without leaving enough tangible evidence behind for traditional police work to actually catch him. For over 10 years, so many people, even the experts, thought this mystery would literally never be solved. Part 3. The digital breakthrough. So what changed? Well, instead of just staring at the old clues that had led to absolute dead ends, a new task force came in and dragged this case into the modern era. Investigators started combining highly advanced modern DNA testing with historical cell phone records, old surveillance footage, and really complex digital forensic evidence. By layering these modern investigative techniques over those cold tracks from the past, they were finally able to bypass the dead ends that had haunted detectives for years. And as they ran all this data through these new technological lenses, one single name slowly began popping up, again and again. And that name? Rex Heuermann, the quiet architect. This is honestly the most chilling contrast at the absolute center of this case. Rex Heuermann was an architect living a seemingly ordinary life right there on Long Island. He had absolutely no previous murder convictions. To his neighbors, his coworkers, and the outside world, he appeared to be just a quiet, totally normal guy. But underneath that facade, using the digital footprint he didn't even realize he was leaving, investigators firmly believed they had finally cornered the monster they'd been hunting for over a decade. Let's trace this timeline to really wrap our heads around the massive scale of time we're talking about here. It all starts in 2010 with that initial discovery. It took a massive gap of 13 years until July 2023, when police finally arrested Rex Heuermann. That announcement absolutely shocked the country. According to investigators, it was the DNA evidence and that digital forensic footprint, especially those cell phone records, that solidly connected him to several of the victims. And it didn't just stop at the arrest. In the months that followed, authorities intensely searched his home, pulling out even more evidence. As investigators reviewed this newly acquired data, more charges quickly followed. Part 4. Confession and Justice. Now, for a very long time following his arrest, Heuermann vehemently denied all the allegations. He firmly maintained his innocence. But in April 2026, everything changed. Standing right there inside a New York courtroom, in a moment that just stunned so many people who had followed the case for years, Rex Heuermann unexpectedly pleaded guilty. 8. That's the number. During that plea, he didn't just admit to murdering the 7 women who were already explicitly included in the criminal case against him. He admitted to killing an 8th woman as well. Hearing a confession to 8 murders brought out incredibly emotional reactions from the victims' families who were present in the courtroom. Some openly cried. Some expressed that, finally, they had answers after waiting in the dark for more than a decade. But others heartbreakingly pointed out the painful reality. No legal sentence could ever replace the vibrant lives that were so violently taken from them. Which brings us to the culmination of this immense legal battle. In June 2026, Rex Heuermann was officially sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, while this guilty plea and life sentence thankfully spared the grieving families from having to relive every single gruesome detail during a lengthy, highly publicized trial, the work of the police actually isn't over. Even though this specific criminal case has reached its conclusion, investigators are still actively reviewing evidence connected to other unsolved crimes, just to determine whether Heuermann's reign of terror might be linked to even more victims. I want to leave you with this final, incredibly powerful takeaway. When new technology meets determined investigators, no case is truly cold. The Gilgo Beach murders stood as one of America's biggest, most impenetrable mysteries for years. But the incredible advances in DNA technology, combined with the tracking of digital evidence and relentlessly patient investigative work, eventually cracked a case that the whole world thought would just remain a mystery forever. For the families of the victims, this guilty plea doesn't erase a single ounce of their pain, but it did finally provide the answers they were owed. And it leaves us with a really provocative realization to think about. In an era where our digital shadows follow us everywhere we go, has modern digital forensics permanently changed the landscape of justice? Thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.